Obviously I'm here on the Thames, not a great day, but it never is in England. And the only time I ever come to London and really film it is when there's a Laravel London meetup, so let's see how that goes. Oh, also, I've been roped into doing a talk there as well, which is totally unprepared, so let's see how that goes. Okay guys, so we've got a train here, more of London and some graffiti. There's my boosted board and some fucking pigeons fucking everywhere in London. Again, we're on the Thames, there's some people walking and there's now some boats, and now we've got some more pigeons. No, these are seagulls, sorry, not pigeons. But who gives a fuck? Let's just watch the talk.
Alright, our next speaker is David, who's, if you've ever joined the UK Laravel Slack channel, is one of the more vocal people in the channel, and his talk tonight will be on the finest technical wankery.
Yeah, I was gonna make a big thing of the reveal, but you've just ruined it. But that's cool. Yeah, so yeah, cool. So thank you very much for having me talk, John. John on Thursday said to me that I've got to do a talk, have to do a talk on Tuesday. And I'm a professional procrastinator, and I'm really good at burying my head in the sand and just thinking, yeah, do it later. So it came to the point yesterday where I decided I had to pull a talk out of my arse, and so here it is. It's going to be relatively short, potentially controversial. Another thing to note is that I am from Essex. My dad was quite vocal with the swear word, so I just want to make sure there's no kids in the room because my language is quite poor from time to time, and no offence is intended. So the talk is called Technical Debt. What about Technical Wankery? And this is a combination of 10 years, 12 years of kind of software development, and how I've kind of moved from going from complete junior to the point where I'm sort of doing contract work. I'm seeing lots of different code bases on a day-to-day basis, and just my sort of feelings and rants about it really, and how we can use Laravel to hopefully alleviate some of these code smells, as some of them people politely call it, whereas I call it technical wankery. So, introduction, hello. Who's this guy anyway? My name's David Thorpe. I run two different companies. One is Carve. I'm a contractor. I go into clients' offices and help out with code. I wanted to create a little bit of a brand around what I do, because I don't just do the contract stuff on site. Sometimes people come to me and say, we've got an idea for a product, we'd like to get it built, so I have to take it from the very beginning steps of discovery right through to deploying and even maintaining that. I wanted to create a little brand around that rather than just saying David Thorpe, the dev type thing. I also do something called Little Video Co, which is my new venture, which is I'd like to create video adverts for internet-based companies with a bit of an edge, so it's just a bit of a creative outlet for me. I do code all day, so it's nice to be able to sort of get behind a camera and do some sort of videos, not dodgy videos, but just business videos. And if you're interested in any sort of vlog stuff related to development, I do sort of have some ramblings, again, a little bit controversial. Just go to that link there, it'll take you straight through to the YouTube channel, because I never maintain a real blog or a website because I'm too lazy. So, like I said, I've been doing this about 10 or 12 years. I'm just getting super pessimistic with things. I wish I had the enthusiasm of back when I was maybe a year or two in, where I'd follow all the blog posts, and every time Taylor tweeted, I'd be like, oh man, yeah, let's reply and hope he likes my tweet. I'd buy all the books, I'd go on all the YouTube videos and watch everything that I could and soak it all up. And one of the things that I kind of started out with this development was I started out working at a creative agency. There's actually someone here today who worked at the same agency that I did out in Leigh-on-Sea in Essex. So we both understand the pressures of agency style work. So I'm talking about small market websites for businesses, 1 to 5 pages, all the way up to sort of CMS systems that allow clients to manage their own pages and put graphics in that are way too big for the design and then complain about it looking crap. And then we have to go and fix it. So agency work I found is very fast turnaround. These clients want stuff done yesterday, they call you up, I want it done now. They've got virtually no budget, they want Facebook built in a month, so it doesn't give us time for any bullshit. We can't sit there and we can't do unit tests for pages, we just don't get the flexibility to do that. As much as in some scenarios we try and say, I kind of attribute this to when my electrician comes to my house and says, Dave, I can't work on your fuse box, it's actually illegal. I say, it's working, don't worry about it, just do it. It's exactly the same thing, I'm just as bad but in the other sense. But the important thing that we have to do with agency work is we can't actually release code that is total crap because we do have to maintain it. Because 6 months down the line, the client's going to come back and say, I want this feature, I want it to be done quick. So we do have to kind of find that balance between code that's not terrible, but also code that's not completely over-engineered. It's a shame that we're doing some sort of fancy airplay thing here, because I was kind of liking the fancy animations I've done, but they've been lost in a little bit of lag. So yeah, burnout guaranteed with agency work, so if you're going to get into it, I recommend taking some time out for yourself. So I'm going to kind of look at 2 main points here. One is using a hammer for every single job that you've got around the house, and we all know that that doesn't end very well. The second is buying every single tool available out there for the jobs that you might have in the house. You just end up skinned. So the first that I'm going to talk about is, do we have any people here that are maybe like 1 to 2 years into the whole development thing, or maybe with Laravel? So back when I started with Laravel, and I don't know, maybe some of you have found this as well, there was a big talk about the repository pattern. I think it was even in Taylor's book himself. We were sold on the idea of the repository pattern. What it promised us was that we could have one central place to store and retrieve data. We'd be able to call a repository and say, give me a user bytes ID, or get me all of the users. But the big selling point that we were sold on was that there was this inherent flexibility, that we could at one point decide that, you know, Eloquent's not for us. We're going to use Mongo today, or we're going to use React. So we just swap it out, and it just works like that. Awesome. And it does make you feel really smart when you wire this up and it's like, look what I've done, it's super cool. I've got a massive problem with this, and only up until 2 years ago, I was actually doing this for every single project that would come in. And God, some of them are massive, so you'd have like 20, 25 tables. And I know that's actually not big compared to some of the projects you guys work on in product, like big product-based environments. But wiring up 25 repositories with all the interfaces was just a nightmare. So for those of you not aware of the repository pattern, I just want to go over this and reiterate what it takes to get one model hooked up to a repository pattern. Okay. So we start with our interface, because we would like a contract, don't we? We're going to call that user.php as our interface. Really simple. So we're just going to implement, we're going to put a method in there. This is our little contract. This is what we stick to. Get by ID, where we pass an ID in. And we're going to want to implement that contract on an Eloquent user repository. I'm not even going to go into Mongo at this point. And the way to do that is like this. So we just create an Eloquent user repository, it implements our user contract, it implements our method, and we actually call this Eloquent user model, find, awesome. That goes to this and does the Eloquent magic and returns us our user. The Eloquent model itself is just an Eloquent model. Yeah, there we go. With a table, and then we've got a back-end Wankery provider. This is where we're going to put all of our application bindings. So we actually need to tell Laravel. We need to create a way to tell Laravel when we call the user contract that we actually want our Eloquent implementation and not maybe a Mongo implementation or a React implementation. So to do that, we do something very simple like this. We just tell it that we want an Eloquent user repository. This is cool. In a way, because you could have like a user and you could have a post, and the post repository could call Mongo, whereas everything else could call Eloquent, so that could work for your application. And obviously we have to add that backend Wankery provider to our app.php file. This is super laggy. There we go. Awesome. So we've had to touch, like, how many here? 1, 2, 3, 4. We would have to touch that, 5. Yeah, between 5 and 4. We have to create a model anyway, but we've got to create about 4 or 5 different instances of files here and kind of hook them up and hope we don't make a mistake in the process. So doing this 10 to 15 times, let's say you've got 10 or 15 models, becomes incredibly time consuming and real hard work, but we're solving this idea that allows us to swap out the implementation at any point. So this is how we would actually use it in a real world scenario. This is a controller, a user controller. We're just passing in this kind of type hinted method. Laravel's going to go away and go, oh, I can see you've bound that to the Eloquent implementation, and we can call get by ID and we'll get our user. That's the better way of doing it, in my opinion, just call the model directly. And the reason that I say this is, I'll show you why now, because this is basically, 90% of code bases that I've been into do this anyway. So they've built this repository pattern around 15 to 20 different models. You've got all these files and folders, it's taken them forever to do, but in the views and everywhere else, we're still using Eloquent relationships. We're still using methods that are directly on the Eloquent model itself. So even if the main selling point of the repository pack to me was the idea you could swap out this underlying implementation, but you can't without rewriting everything in your app anyway if you concretely tied it to Eloquent. So for me, it kind of just felt like a massive waste of time once I'd clocked why. And it was only when I worked at I was working for, again, another agency 2 years ago. I was a contractor, so they hired me in and said, Dave, we've got this incredibly boring product to build, as they all are. Can you, I've been doing this too long. Can you do it for us? So I popped in and I spent a while. They've already got the table layout in their head. They've given me the database schema. I spent a while kind of hooking up all these repositories, all these interfaces, and I felt super smart. And I committed that commit, and the guy went, "We don't do that here, Dave. It's not the way we do it." And at first it offended me a little bit. I thought, I've worked really hard on this. This is the way the tailor said it was done, so it's got to be done this way, right? Apparently not. So when I really thought about it, I was thinking, actually, that makes a lot more sense. And they did it in a very simple way as well. So in their controllers, they called the model directly. Now, there's some probably warning flags going up for people that are kind of quite tied to this repository pattern. It's like, okay, well, how do we get data out of the database for more complex queries? And how do we do that in a way that we're not littering our controllers with loads and loads of queries? In my opinion, I think we should go back to services. So, to be honest with you, in a lot of the applications that I've built, and it may be different from you, but there's very little complex queries, and the ones that I have been sort of easily and nicely tidied away into a service. And what this agency did for storing data was another thing, and actually it was quite interesting, and this is where we can use Laravel's request objects, and I found this a really interesting way to keep things tidied up and concerns tidied up as well. So Laravel request object, if you don't know, super quick. It allows you to get a request that comes in. In this scenario, it's a user profile update request. So we're just making sure that we've got a name and that is required, and the user passes the data through. If not, we're going to kick it out and say, hey, you need to fix your errors type thing. So it's really good for that, and it's the way that we would implement that is like this. So in the controller, we actually just put the request straight in there, type hint it. It's not even going to let us get to this code until that request is validated. So it's really cool for that. Now, this bit itself can get quite messy because we're only doing the name here. So imagine if you've got 12 different inputs, 15 different inputs. Yes, I could use Phil, but that would demonstrate my point very well. So what we can do is actually tidy that away into the request object itself in an update method. So we'll also return the user at that point, which then tidies the controller up further to just be a one-liner. So as long as our data validates, we update the data with one line and then we can redirect to the profile. The reason that I really like this is that it keeps the concerns very separate. So imagine a scenario where you've got your web front end and your API back end, and you can update a user profile from either of those avenues, but the requirements are slightly different. Maybe the API requires the user's full name to be sent through as well. So you can create a separate validator for that, and you can also create a separate implementation of the update method to make sure that that data goes into the database how you want. It just makes sure that any time that you're storing data like that, that it's validated exactly as per the type of request that it's coming at, if that makes sense. I'm sort of screwing the English up a bit there, but you know what I mean. So the other thing that request objects are really cool for is because you're actually extending off of Laravel's request object, you can get the user instance straight away from the, so any logged in users, you can get that information straight from the request object. You can also get bound parameters as well. So if you're updating a post and you've got the post ID in the URL, you can do this root post and it will give you the post object. You can update that, bang, return it to the controller. So again, yeah, these store and update methods are inherently tied to the data that you've just validated, all in the same class. So you know, bang, one chunk of code, that's where it all goes. So my opinion is to try and keep things as simple as possible. If you're new to things, or if you're looking at these design patterns that are thrown around, I genuinely believe that in 90% of use cases they are technical wankery. In some cases they are really useful. But again, the caveat is I just build boring products, so I'm happy to kind of use Eloquent's root binding and these sort of methods to help speed up my development speed. But if you're in a product-based business where things are a lot slower going, you're able to spend some time doing some more technical stuff to make things a little bit more stable and robust, then go for it. It's not an extremist talk, I promise. So the next point that I want to go over is buying all the tools for jobs that you don't have yet. So we all know that technical debt is expensive. So over the course of building an application, especially MVP, I've done a lot of work with startups as well. The people in charge do not care about code quality. It's all about getting to market as quick as possible. So as developers, we do have to kind of tread a fine line there. We don't want to annoy our bosses and say it's got to be done this way, and we've got to do it super clean and whatnot. But we've got to find that fine line between getting the job done but keeping it maintainable, because ultimately it's us in the end that have to maintain the code, right? So technical debt is expensive, but so is technical wankery, in my opinion. Has anyone here worked with Magento? Yeah, like 2 people. Dan, yes, you will have worked with Magento. Magento is a prime example of technical wankery at its finest. It once took me, I worked for an e-commerce company at one point. They sold garden furniture, and the guy came up to me that owns the company and said, Dave, can we remove this link at the top that's got a link to the contact us page? I was like, yeah, no worries, I'll do it in 5 minutes. It took me a day. There was so much hierarchy and abstraction, it absolutely just ruined me. And from that point on, I went job hunting. I was like, I can't do this anymore, this is just absolutely unreal. So I think a result of technical wankery is that we've got too many abstractions. It takes us too long to find something that should be relatively simple. If we've got to use an IDE to be able to get through any of this code to figure out what's going on where, and how many of you have done this as well, where you've got a composer package and the client's like, when's it going to be done? And you're like, I'll have it done in 10 minutes. I've just found a composer package that does the job, we'll pull it in. But you want to change a property on that package, and it's unfortunately a private property, and there's abstracted so much you can't change it now, which is a real problem. So what do? You submit a pull request and hope that it gets sort of accepted in within the next 30 minutes, or do you just copy and paste it, hack it in? That tends to be what I do. So I find with all these abstractions, it just does my head in and slows me down in a lot of scenarios, because ultimately they're trying to find solutions to problems that we don't yet have. So here, what are common symptoms of over-engineering? Code that solves problems that you don't have. I think that's like a super nice, concise way of putting things. And I kind of try to live by this. If I start going off down the route where I'm thinking, I read this cool thing on Hacker News the other day, I'm going to see if I can implement it, I'll try and think back, is this solving a problem I've actually got right now, or am I just trying to massage my own ego? It's usually the latter, so I kind of have to pull myself back a little bit. Here's another great example. Can you pass the salt? I'm developing a system to pass you arbitrary condiments. It will save time in the long run. Just wanted some salt. But it's basically like going to a guy and saying, can you build me an affordable 3-bedroom house, please? And it's 2 years late, it costs £1 million, and when you ask why, he's told you can turn 2 rooms into one by unbolting the thing, and we've put pipes everywhere so that you can put a bathroom in any room that you want. It's like, it's not what I asked for. But sometimes we as devs like to imagine what the client's going to ask for in the long run, and we'll build something that allows us to do that. But my experience has been that the client asks for weird shit that we would never expect, and we've never ever coded the app to kind of react to that, so we've got to do it anyway all again. So yeah, keeping it simple, in my opinion, doesn't mean you aren't a great engineer, and I do think actually learning design patterns is actually very, very important, because there are times when you can use them, and there are times when it massively cleans up code. When you've got a problem that can be simplified by design patterns, I think they're really, really good. So don't get me wrong, I'm not a Luddite. I just think it means you're a much more effective engineer for your clients, for your bosses, for everything. So it's kind of keeping that realism hat on top of things. So yeah, I've sped through that. I'm sure we want to get to the pub anyway. So yeah, any questions and answers? A bit controversial, so I apologise. No?
Questions? Anyone?
Just wondering, considering depending on the size of the application, to consider going more towards a service design pattern?
Serverless?
Services.
Oh, services.
So you try to go to services and then services to interface.
Yeah, so
Trying to keep it more of a dry approach. So your services control all the updating.
I kind of like to do a mix. So I got into this domain-driven development a while back. So I kind of like that in that you can create a class that describes exactly what you're doing. So you might want to, let's say you've got like a list of jobs or something, and you could get like a job finder class, for example, and you just pass the request object in and it figures out what the user wants, all that sort of thing. I think that's really, really good, and I think that's really useful, yeah. Services I've found are quite useful if you want to do stuff out of the ordinary, but often or not. Depends on you. Maybe that's why I'm bored of development. Maybe I should find more interesting work. Yeah.
Going to the whole repository pattern, I couldn't work with it when I was using Eloquent. I dropped Eloquent, put Doctrine in, and it works. You don't need to do an interface for your entity because your entity is a plain class.
Yeah.
You just need to hydrate it.
Yeah, I agree. I think Doctrine's awesome if you're built. So I'm currently working with a client at the minute, and we've built a really, really big application. And part of me now kind of wishes that we'd use something like Doctrine, even down to simple things such as when you're pulling out tons of Eloquent records. You know, there's tons of magic associated with that, and it's slow as hell. So yeah, the fact that you can hydrate models directly from Doctrine, and you can code that class just as a plain PHP object is, I actually think that's quite powerful. I really like Eloquent still because a lot of the clients that I work with just want very simple stuff and they want it done quickly. But yeah, for the bigger products and stuff, I think Doctrine's awesome, and it does make sense in that sense, because if you was going to take the repository pattern with Eloquent, you would need to build a separate model on top of what's returned to standardize the output, if you know what I mean, so that then whatever's returned from Mongo can be hydrated into that, and it just becomes a clusterfuck. So yeah, I think Doctrine's if you like the repository pattern and you're working on big projects, I'd recommend it.
It also helps with people who come into projects. Like, the save is on the model. I can use that here. I know I've got the interface, but I need to save.
Yeah.
If they don't have access to that, they won't use it.
Yeah, it's we can't be doing with trusting devs. No, I know what you mean. Yeah, I like the whole entity manager thing, especially if sometimes you get designers involved, don't you, with the front end, and that you'll let them loose with a blade template and wish you hadn't. And there'll be all sorts of weird relationships being pulled and variables being set and stuff being saved in the footer, and you think, oh, what? Doctrine's really good to sort of avoid that. So yeah, it's really good. It's a good idea to pick your tools. Yeah, definitely. Hello.
What are your thoughts on having to unpick a dickhead's code?
A dickhead code?
Where they literally over-engineered it to the point it's completely unintelligible. You've got to come in and do something with it. But first you've got to decipher this nonsense.
Well, I told you, man, I quit my job doing Magento. To be honest, I actually see it as the same as refactoring code that is like technical debt. I think first off, as much as I'm not a huge fan of testing, I'll put in some integration tests. So I'll put in some integration tests around the component that I'm gonna pull apart and simplify. That way I can be a little bit sure that what I'm doing is not totally breaking the application, but it is programming, and it's guaranteed to probably break at some point. So, yeah, it's a really hard one, especially if the developer that done that is actually still working at the same company, because there's also a social problem there, isn't there? Because you don't want to tread on toes, but you also kind of want to say, what the fuck is this? Yeah, it's a tricky one. But I do think perhaps just treat it as if it's technical debt, write some tests around it, and try and simplify as much as possible. Sometimes it even gets to the point where you need to do a rewrite, because if everything's become so generic and everything's so tied to this weird generic thing that's been created that can do everything, it becomes almost impossible to do. Yeah, I feel your pain.
Well, the reason I asked is because I came into a project where really what was required was really quite simple. It was a bit of a glorified CMS.
Yeah.
But the previous developer had come in and done some domain gateway batshit weirdness. And I could just about read it. I had to say to the guys I was working for, look, it will probably take me less time to start from scratch than to just try and figure it out.
It sets off fear in them, doesn't it? Start from scratch. Was he a contractor?
Yeah.
Yeah, money.
It was a contract team.
Oh wow, yeah, even more money, yeah. They had them on the agile thing and everything, didn't they? I bet, yeah, Cool, any others?
Yeah, one on the repository pattern. I was wondering if you thought you'd be happy with a simpler version of that, where you just have the two files, the user extends Eloquent plus the user repository. and not bother with the interfaces, and then you don't need the service provider.
I've not seen the implementation of that, but my concern would be the same, that we would still use Eloquent-specific relationships and methods within our areas, other areas of the application, and I'd question. It's really hard, all this sort of development thing, right, where someone stands up here and they say, this is how you should do it, blah, blah, blah. It lacks so much perspective, because I don't know what you're doing, I don't know your project. So for your project, it might make total sense, but for my project, it doesn't. So it's kind of like a ramblings of what my experience is with my project, but if it works for you, great. Yeah, so I could be a politician, I'm so non-committal. No? All right, well, thank you very much for listening.
Alrighty, thanks David for your entertaining talk. And thanks everyone for coming tonight. There probably won't be another meetup before the conference, but there'll be another one maybe a month or two after that. So thanks for coming. We have to clear out here by 9, so 10 minutes to grab another quick beer or have a quick chat. See you next time. Take care. Cheers.